What's up guys, I'm Puneet from Programiz and welcome back to this series on JavaScript. In this video, we will learn about the for loop and use it to repeat a block of code multiple times. We will also learn about two different versions of the for loop, for in and for off loop. So let's get started. In the last video, we learned about the while loop. Similar to the while loop, we can also use a for loop to repeat a block of code for a required number of times. However, the syntax of a for loop is different from the while loop, so let's first look at the syntax of the for loop. The for loop starts with the keyword for, followed by initialization, condition, and update expression wrapped up in parentheses. The initialization expression declares and initializes a variable that we'll need inside the for loop. For example, it can be something like let I equals 1. Here, the variable I is initialized with value 1. The initialization expression is executed only once in a for loop. Next is the condition expression. It's a Boolean expression like I less than 5. It evaluates to either true or false. If the condition is true, the code inside the for loop is executed. Then the update expression is executed as well. The update expression updates the value of the variable. For example, it can be something like I plus plus, or I could have also written I equals I plus 1. Here, the update expression increases the value of I by 1 in each iteration. So the value of I becomes 2 in the second iteration. Now, this condition is evaluated again, and if it's true, the code inside the for loop is executed again, and the update expression again is executed at the end. So the value of I now becomes 3. This process continues until the condition is false. If the condition is false, the for loop is terminated. Let's see an example to drive home the point further. Suppose I want to print a message 5 times, then I can use a for loop to run it 5 times. So let me create a for loop, and inside the initialization, I can say let I equals 1. Since I want to print the message 5 times, I'll write a condition I less than equals 5, and I'll update the value of I by 1 in each iteration. So I'll say I plus plus. Inside the for loop, let me print the message. So I'll print 2 messages, learning for loop, and similarly, JavaScript is fun. Let me also print the value of I so that we know what's happening inside the loop. Let me run this code. As you can see, the messages I've written are printed 5 times. Now let's see what's happening here. During the for loop initialization, the variable I is assigned the value 1. Now the condition I less than or equals to 5 is tested. Since this is true, the body of the loop is executed, and that's what gives us the output learning for loop, JavaScript is fun, and the value of I, which is 1. Then the update expression I plus plus is executed, which increases the value of I by 1 to 2. Now this test condition is evaluated again. 2 less than or equals to 5 is true, and this body is again executed, and that's why we get learning for loop, JavaScript is fun, and the value of I, which is 2. This process continues for the value of I from 1 to 5. When the value of I becomes 6, this test condition 6 less than or equals to 5 is false, and the loop terminates. In this way, the messages are printed 5 times from I equal 1 to 5. If you're enjoying this video, please also check out Programiz Pro, where we provide tutorials along with quizzes and challenges which will help you practice and test your learning in real time. Also, the course includes projects to give you an awesome experience of how programming works in the real world. And for our YouTube subscribers, we are giving 50% off on the yearly plan. Sign up by scanning this QR code or use the link in the video description to claim your discount. Now that we know the working of a for loop, let's create a more practical example. I'll use the for loop to create a multiplication table up to 10. So I'll start by asking the user to provide a numeric value, and I'll store it in the variable. Let me remove this old code, and I can say const number equals parse int to convert from string to number, and prompt to get the input from the user. So I'll say enter a number. The multiplication starts from 1, so let me create an initialization expression as count equals 1. So for let count equals 1. Since I'm printing the multiplication table up to 10, I'll use the for loop to run for 10 times. Here, I'll use the condition count less than or equal to 10. So count less than equals 10. And my update expression will increase the value of count by 1. So I'll say count plus plus. Inside the for loop, I'll multiply the number passed by the user with the count variable and store it obviously in a variable. So let me create const product equals number, which is the number given by the user, times count. So I'll use template strings to print the result. I can say console.log and then the tilde dollar number x or times dollar count equals dollar product. As you can see, I've used template strings to print the output in a nice format. This will make our output look something like 8 multiplied by 1 equals 8, 8 multiplied by 2 equals 16, and so on. Let me run this code and I'll enter something like 9 and press enter. And as you can see, I got the multiplication table of 9. Here we're multiplying the number by the value of count inside the for loop. We know that the value of count is increased by 1 in each iteration, so the value of count starts with 1 and number was 9, so product was 9 times 1. In the second iteration, the value of count was 2, so the product becomes 9 times 2, and so on. That's how we get the multiplication table of 9 from 1 to 10. In JavaScript, there's another version of for loop called the for in loop, which is used to loop over all keys of an object. Before we go forward, let's learn a bit about objects first. We use an object to store collections of data. For example, if you want to store information about a student like name, age, and grade, we can create an object like this. So I'll go to my code editor and let me create an object called student, and a student object can be created by using the curly braces, and inside this I can say name colon a string like Monica. Similarly, I can store a number like grade and another number like age. Here student is an object that stores information in key value pairs. Name is a key and the string Monica is the value. Similarly, grade is a key and 7 is the value. Now, while working with objects, we can use the for in loop to iterate over the keys of an object. Let me write a for in loop to iterate over the keys of this object student. So I can say for let data in student and curly braces as usual. Here data represents the key of the student object, and in each iteration I want to print the key and the value. So I can say console log and then again the string template strings. So I can say dollar data and let me put an arrow and let me say dollar student data. In the first iteration, data is assigned the name key. In the second iteration, data is assigned the grade key, and in the third iteration of the loop, data is assigned as age. And the student data you see here gives me the actual value of the key. So in the first iteration, this becomes student name, which is Monica, and in the second iteration I get 7, and in the third iteration I get 12. So here I've tried to print both the key and the value together. Let me press run, and you can see that I got the output I was looking for, the key and the value together. If you do not know about objects and are finding this a bit difficult to understand, don't worry. Just understand the working of for in loop for now. We will go deeper into objects in the later videos. Okay guys, we need your support to keep these types of content free for all users. YouTube really likes engagement on the video, so leave a comment below, press that like button and hit subscribe if you haven't already. Let's get the engagement score high up so that more people can discover and enjoy these courses. Besides for and for in loops, JavaScript also has a for off loop. This was introduced in the newer version of JavaScript known as JavaScript ES6 or ECMAScript 2015. The for off loop allows us to iterate over iterable objects such as arrays. Before we learn more, let's learn a bit about arrays first. An array contains a list of items of either the same or different data types. Suppose we want to store names of students, this is where we can use an array. So I'll go back to my code editor and I'll say const students equals John, Sarah and say Jack. Here the students array contains 3 elements, John, Sarah and Jack. Now we can use the for of loop to iterate over the array elements. I'll write for, and inside the parenthesis let me say let data of students. You must have guessed by now, if I say console.log data, data will first contain John, then Sarah and then Jack. In this way we can access all the elements of the array one by one. I'll run this code, and as you can see, John, Sarah and Jack are printed. We will dive deeper into arrays and how the for loop works with arrays in later videos, so don't worry if you're feeling confused. We can also use the for of loop to access other iterable objects like sets, maps and strings. Let's see one example of using for of to iterate over a string. So let me remove this old code and I'll start by creating a variable named language. So I'll say const language equals JavaScript. Now I want to use the for of loop to iterate through each character of the string. So I can say for let character of language, and I'll say console.log character. You must have guessed the output by now. When I press run, you can see that I got all the characters of the string JavaScript. That's because a string is essentially a collection of characters, and that's why we get each character when using the for of loop with a string. Now to practice what we've learned, here's a programming task for you. Can you use the for loop to print all the even numbers from 1 to 100? The output would be something like this. You'll find the answer to this question in our GitHub repository. Also, if you want to revise these concepts, you can find all these programs there as well. I'll put the link in the video description below. Now that we've reached the end of this video, it's time for the Programiz quiz. Which of the following loops is used to iterate over keys of an object? Comment your answer below, and happy programming!